Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're taking a really fascinating journey into the hidden world of plants. We're drawing insights from Brian Capon's Botany for Gardeners. Our mission really is to unpack how plants don't just survive and thrive, but, actively protect themselves, not just out in the wild, but right there in our backyards.
Yeah, it's easy to think of a garden as, well, purely a human creation, isn't it? A place where we decide what grows. But as we'll see, nature is still kind of the ultimate decision maker for what truly flourishes. We're going to explore that inherent suitability, how plants fit their environment, and how these deep-seated genetic legacies, they really dictate growth, even after generations of us cultivating them.
So essentially, even my prize-winning roses are still running on ancient software. That really frames our first point, I think, the garden habitat as this, well, artificial creation, shaped by human preferences, right? We choose for looks, for food, how easy they are to grow, sometimes just cost. But like you said, these choices have to line up with the plant's own evolutionary programming.
That's such a critical point. And this is where concepts like climate zones become so important. These zones, they divide up the world based on things like latitude, elevation, rainfall, temperature extremes. Any experienced gardener, they sort of instinctively get these relationships. But what's striking is that each plant species grows best only within precisely defined limits established way back in its ancestral evolution. Even if it's generations removed from the wild, it's genetically programmed for specific conditions.
Okay, so there are the physical conditions, but what about the more subtle cues, the ones that guide a plant's life cycle? I think I read something about photoperiodism. Is that right?
Ah, yes, you're right to pick up on that. Photoperiodism. Many plants also respond to the seasonal changes in day length, particularly as you move away from the equator. This requirement, it coordinates their reproductive cycles with the seasons that are actually best for growth. It's a pretty profound mechanism, making sure flowers bloom and seeds set when conditions are just right. And this is where the plant's fundamental nature-dictated needs really take precedence over our, well, less crucial human concerns.
It's incredible how much we try to control, isn't it? But even then, I've heard that sometimes just one missing piece, one little thing, can derail everything for a plant. Is there a term for that, like a bottleneck effect?
Absolutely. Yeah, we call it a limiting factor. Even if conditions seem perfect, a single limiting factor can hold a plant back. So picture this. A plant has plenty of water, perfect temperature, but it's shaded by, say, a building. It just won't photosynthesize effectively. Growth is limited. Or maybe it has full sun, lots of fertilizer, but temperatures swing too high or too low. Stunted growth again. Even things like microorganisms, animals, they can be limiting factors too. Fungi, insects. This really explains why plants out in nature rarely reach their, full growth potential. The garden often lets us grow healthier, bigger specimens just by tweaking a few of these factors.
Okay, so we've covered how plants are wired for their environment and how one factor can make or break things. But what about our role? As gardeners, we're always trying to, nudge them along. What are some key ways we modify their environment? And where do we hit those natural limits?
Well, historically, human intervention has just fundamentally transformed landscapes into agricultural regions. Think
Yeah.
about the basics. Irrigation, tilling the soil, fertilizing, pest control, pulling weeds. These are all ways we try to meet a plant's inherited needs, right? It allows us to grow things that might not naturally thrive in that specific spot.
And then, of course, there are greenhouses, those really controlled environments.
Precisely. Greenhouses offer significant protection from frost, snow, wind, intense sun, low humidity. That is stepping into a tropical paradise in, the middle of winter. That's the magic of that environmental control. But outdoors, our control is actually quite limited. Plants face every single challenge nature throws at them out there.
Speaking of limits, plants don't live forever, do they? Even the really tough ones. Tell us about senescence.
Senescence. Right. Simply put, it's genetically programmed deterioration, cells, tissues, leading to old age and death. But what's often missed is that this programmed death isn't really a failure. It's often a highly evolved strategy. For annuals, it's a whole life cycle in 1 year, then death. But the species survives through its seeds, which are incredibly resilient. Its efficiency, really, even if it sounds brutal. Biennials, they go through it in their second year. Perennials, though, they undergo localized senescence. Older leaves, branches die off, but the whole organism might take years, decades even, to finally succumb. And once that process really kicks in, even the best care won't save them.
It's definitely clear plants aren't just passive victims. They have these incredible survival strategies, especially for harsh conditions. What happens when, say, winter is coming or a really bad drought?
Ah, that's when dormancy kicks in. A crucial adaptation. It lets plants basically dial down their physiological activities to a minimum, just enough to survive. They might even shed vulnerable parts, like leaves, that are prone to frost or drying out. Think of it like a bear hibernating for winter, but the plant version. Temperate zone biennials and perennials, they gear up for winter cold and wind. While some desert perennials, they go dormant to survive those long, hot, dry summers.
And they protect their growth engines, right? The parts that will restart everything when conditions get better.
Precisely. A dormant plant has these well-protected meristems. They're essentially the plant's growth factories, zones of rapidly dividing cells ready for renewed growth.
Yeah.
Think of them as tiny protected cores. For instance, the vascular and cork cambia, those layers key for outward growth in bark. They're surrounded by cork tissue. Cork is a great insulator, and it's impregnated with suberin, which stops water loss. And then the apical meristems at stem tips and inside buds, they're encased in layers of bud scales. These are like modified leaves acting like little armored shields against cold or dehydration.
What about annuals, though? The ones that die every year. How do they survive the harsh seasons?
Annuals survive the worst bits as dormant seeds. Seeds are actually the hardiest structures higher plants produce. It's what we call an avoidance strategy. Only a tiny part of the plant, the seed, makes it through dormant. The whole organism is genetically programmed to exist only during the most favorable time of year.
I'm picturing those amazing desert wildflowers, the ones that just seem to explode overnight after a rain.
You've got it. That's a perfect example of this avoidance strategy. In deserts, these annuals might only have a growing season of, say, 2 to 4 months. If there's enough rain, boom. They race through their life cycle: germination, growth, flowering, seed production, all before the intense summer heat hits. We call them ephemerals. They might be tiny, just a few leaves, a short stem, but they produce these miniature blossoms and seeds. Imagine a vast, barren desert, suddenly just carpeted with multicolored flowers. It's stunning. All thanks to these tiny, tough plants whose seeds might wait decades in the soil for the right conditions.
Okay, so that's deserts. What about the other extreme? Like the Arctic tundra or high mountains. They face incredible cold and wind.
Right. Different extremes, but just as challenging. Most plants there are perennials, and they tend to adopt this low, compact, sort of cushion-like form that protects them against heavy snow and strong winds. Plus, being close to the ground helps them absorb reflected heat from the sun, creates a little microclimate that helps with growth and also attracts pollinators, the insects. Many Arctic and Alpine perennials are evergreen too. It's an energy-saving trick. They just can't afford the time and energy to grow a whole new set of leaves each spring in that short season. And get this, their leaf cells have high sugar concentrations. Acts just like antifreeze. It literally depresses the freezing point of water inside the cells. Plants basically invented antifreeze millions of years ago.
Wow. So the practical takeaway for me, if I'm trying to grow desert plants or maybe some alpine species, I should really try to mimic their native conditions.
Absolutely. Understanding these ancient adaptations makes caring for them so much easier and more successful. For warm climate desert plants like cacti, yeah, you need abundant light, infrequent watering like desert rains, and definitely no prolonged freezing. Alpine species, they need the opposite in some ways. Cold winters, plenty of moisture usually, and long summer days. It's all about respecting that genetic programming.
Okay, switching gears a bit. Plants can't run away, so how do they defend themselves against all the animals that want to eat them?
Well, given that plants are the primary food producers, they're constantly being targeted. It's a tough world out there. And any injury, it compromises their growth or reproduction. So natural selection strongly favors species with effective defenses. Building these defenses, things like thorns, it takes energy. So that tells you just how vital deterrence is for their survival. It's a trade-off honed over millions of years.
Yeah, we've all had run-ins with things that prick or sting. What are those structures, botanically speaking?
Right, botanists classify these protective structures into 4 main categories, and they're all modified plant parts. First, you have thorns. These are actually modified short branches. They grow from buds in the leaf axils, ending in sharp, hard points. Think hawthorn or pyracantha. It's like the plant weaponized branch.
Okay, thorns or branches. What else?
Next are spines. These are modified leaves, or sometimes just parts of leaves. Cactus spines are a classic example. They're leftover bits of rigid petioles or midribs, sharpened for protection. And interestingly, some cactus spines also help manage sunlight, reflecting excess light, and can even condense dew for a bit of moisture.
Fascinating. So thorns or branches, spines or leaves. What about roses? They have thorns, right?
Ah, good question. Technically, the things on a rose stem are prickles. Unlike thorns, prickles are short, woody outgrowths that come from the epidermis, the skin of the plant. They're arranged irregularly, Many are recurved, pointing downwards. Think about an animal trying to climb those hooks make it really difficult. This also gives climbing plants like brambles and bougainvillea a bit of extra support.
Okay, thorns, spines, prickles. What's the fourth type?
The fourth is hairs. Matted epidermal hairs, like on fuzzy leaves, botanists might say pilose for long hairs or pubescent for short hairs. These make it physically difficult for small herbivores like insects to eat the leaf surface. And then you have the really specialized ones like stinging nettles. Their glandular hairs were designed to break off on contact, injecting irritating chemicals, causes a painful rash. Animals learn fast to avoid them.
Some plants even use camouflage, right? Like they're playing hide and seek.
Indeed. It's funny, animal camouflage is so common, but it's surprisingly rare in plants. But there are some absolutely fascinating exceptions, like the living stones from South African deserts. Plants in general, like lithops, only the very top of their fleshy leaves sticks out above the soil surface. And they look exactly like pebbles. Rounded, speckled, dull gray, you'd walk right past them. Light actually penetrates their semi-transparent tops down to the chloroplasts deep inside. It's an amazing adaptation against thirsty animals in a place where succulent tissues are a prime target.
That's incredible. And I read some plants even recruit bodyguards. That sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie.
It really does, doesn't it? It's a truly remarkable strategy. Some plants literally harbor ant colonies for defense. These plants often provide both shelter and food for their little protectors. The ants might live inside hollow stems, or special cup-shaped leaves, or even large hollow thorns like in the Mexican bullhorn acacia. And the plant produces nutritious liquids for the ants too. So any disturbance, the ants swarm out, fiercely attacking any intruder. It's a classic example of symbiosis, a mutually beneficial relationship.
Okay, so they have thorns, hairs, camouflage, even ants. But plants still get damaged sometimes. Wounded. How do they heal?
Yeah, just like animals, rapid wound healing is absolutely vital, mainly to prevent water loss and infection. The epidermis, the outer skin, and the cork, the barky layer, are critical surface barriers. There's a waxy layer called cutin on epidermal cells that stops water loss and helps block fungal spores. And in cork cells, you have suberin and tannin, which inhibit water loss and also act as natural fungicides and insecticides.
So what happens when, say, a branch breaks or I prune something?
Well, if it's herbaceous tissue, like a soft stem, the exposed cells on the surface collapse and die, and then waxy stuff seals the wound. On young woody twigs, a layer of cork can actually form and bridge the injury. For bigger wounds on woody stems or trunks, a special tissue called callus forms from cell division near the wound. This callus then differentiates, forming new vascular and cork cambia, eventually uniting the damaged tissues. This is exactly why, when you prune a tree, making clean cuts close to the trunk helps that cork callus grow over the wound much more effectively. Gardeners actually exploit this callus formation in grafting,
Right.
It forms the initial bridge between the stock and the scion.
So they have a kind of immune response too then, to fight off infections.
In a way, yes. Fungal spores are literally everywhere, so plants need ways to isolate infected areas fast. The phloem, which transports sugars, can be like a highway for infections to spread. So when phloem gets injured, it reacts incredibly quickly. It produces a substance called callus and also a special protein that rapidly plugs the tiny pores connecting phloem cells, called sieve plates. Seals off the broken tubes, food transport gets diverted away from the damaged area. Another defense is just dropping infected leaves entirely. Gets rid of the pathogens. And before a leaf falls, a protective, tannin-rich cork layer forms at the base, sealing the scar.
Okay, what about those sticky or milky substances, the stuff that oozes out when you cut certain plants?
The exudates. Yes, those are highly effective barriers, both physically and chemically. You've got resins, typically produced by conifers like pine trees. They're sticky, aromatic, don't dissolve in water, and harden when exposed to air. Nature's emergency glue, basically. Then there are gums. These are water-soluble, viscous liquids. They dry to form hard coats over wounds, common in woody flowering plants like acacia. And finally, latex, that milky white or sometimes colorless fluid like from a poinsettia or a fig tree. It contains rubber particles that effectively seal small wounds. And what's really amazing is that resins, gums, and latex often contain compounds that kill bacteria and fungi or deter herbivores, the latex from the chicle tree. That's the original base for chewing gum.
Wow. So beyond the physical barriers and wound healing, plants are just master chemists, aren't they? Producing this incredible arsenal of compounds.
They really are. And it raises a key question. How do they even create these chemical defenses? Well, fundamentally, it's evolution acting at the gene level, leading to biochemical changes. All plants have basic metabolism, right, for things like photosynthesis, energy extraction. That's common to almost all life. But then, they produce countless secondary products. These are unique to specific plant species or groups. And these secondary products, they're very often the plant's chemical defenses. While basic metabolism is pretty much the same across the board, these secondary products are what make different plant species biochemically distinct.
Let's talk about some of the big ones, like tannins. What exactly do they do?
Tannins are a really interesting diverse group. Their main trick is binding with proteins. When they bind to enzymes, they inactivate them, which can cause cell death. So they're powerful deterrents to insects and other herbivores. They also inhibit fungi and bacteria effectively. That astringent taste you get from a green apple or really strong tea, that's tannins binding to the proteins in your saliva, reducing lubrication. Makes your mouth feel dry. The name tannin actually comes from their historical use in tanning animal hides into leather. Oak bark is super rich in them. Imagine giving an animal a mouthful of something that makes their mouth feel instantly dry and just unpleasant. Pretty good deterrent.
And then alkaloids, you mentioned those earlier, they've been hugely significant for humans, haven't they?
Absolutely crucial. Alkaloids are nitrogen-containing compounds, usually bitter, and they have really wide-ranging physiological effects on animals. We don't fully know their exact function in the plant in every case, but protection against predators, partly due to that bitterness, seems very likely. And what's also fascinating is that some insects have evolved to eat plants containing alkaloids and actually store those chemicals in their own bodies. They use the plant's defense to protect themselves from being eaten by birds or other larger predators. They become toxic too.
And their role in medicine is just incredible.
Oh, absolutely. From ancient folk medicine right through to the modern pharmaceutical industry, plants containing alkaloids have been central. We use alkaloid extracts as pain relievers, stimulants, muscle relaxants. So many things. Think about
Wow.
caffeine from coffee, nicotine from tobacco, morphine from the opium poppy, even mescaline from the peyote cactus. It's just a testament to the incredible chemical ingenuity of the plant kingdom. Now, obviously, some have been misused, associated with drug abuse, unfortunately. But it's still remarkable that about 1/4 of all prescription drugs sold in the U.S., at least in the late 20th century, originated from plants.
But some plants, some are just straight up deadly, right?
Yeah, indeed. Many plant compounds, which we sometimes call phytotoxins, are just plain poisonous to animals. It's often not fully understood why one part of a plant is toxic and another isn't. Like rhubarb, the stalks, the petioles, are fine to eat, but the leaf blades contain oxalic acid, which can cause severe kidney damage. Tomato plants have solanine, a nasty alkaloid in their roots and shoots, but the fruit is perfectly safe. Poison hemlock, containing conine, that's famously what killed Socrates. Ricin, from castor beans, is one of the most lethal natural substances known. Just a few seeds can be fatal. Fortunately, many phytotoxins induce vomiting, which helps purge the poison from the body, a built-in safety mechanism in a way. And some plants even use warning signs, repellent odors, or don't eat me colors, like the distinct purple-black of some nightshade berries.
Are there other ways, maybe less chemically expensive ways plants protect themselves, less complex compounds?
Yes, definitely. There are some more elementary, less energy-intensive methods. Some plants just accumulate toxic minerals from the soil, things like copper or lead. It makes their tissues poisonous. Lignin, the stuff that makes wood hard and rigid, primarily evolved for support, right, in their skeleton. But it also makes plant tissues really indigestible and coarse. It's like trying to eat wood, not appealing. And perhaps the most basic method, just deplete the leaves and stems of most nutrients, make them nutritionally poor. Why bother eating something with hardly any food value? Meanwhile, the plant stores its valuable reserves safely underground, away from most grazers.
So wrapping this all up, what does this mean for us, whether we're just curious about plants or keen gardeners?
Well, what's truly fascinating, I think, is seeing how deeply intertwined all these survival strategies are. They're tied to the plant's environment, its evolutionary history, its very chemistry. From surviving freezing winters with dormancy and antifreeze, to fending off hungry insects with thorns and toxins. Every single feature, every chemical, every seasonal shift, it's all part of this ancient ongoing story of adaptation, refined over millions and millions of years.
Right, and understanding these complex botanical principles, how plants protect those vital meristems, how their cells manufacture these incredible compounds, how they heal wounds. It doesn't just deepen our scientific knowledge, it actually makes us much better gardeners, doesn't it? When you understand why a plant thrives in certain conditions, or why it has prickles, or why it produces a certain scent, you can work with nature rather than fighting against it. You can foster healthier, more resilient plants in your own garden or home.
Exactly. And it leads to an important question, perhaps a final thought for our listeners. Considering this incredible ingenuity of plant adaptations we've discussed today, what might be the next evolutionary leap for plants, especially in our rapidly changing world. How might human influence, both intentional breeding and unintentional things like climate change or habitat shifts, how might that shape their future defenses and survival strategies?
That's a great thought to ponder next time you're looking closely at a plant in your garden or maybe out on a walk. For the deep dive team, thank you for diving deep with us into the amazing world of plant protection. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep appreciating all those hidden wonders right there around you.